Hey everyone, and welcome back to episode number 50 of the Beginner to Master Speedrun. Excited to be back, and I am coming into today rated 1811 on a win streak of 153 games. And yeah, hopefully I can stay clean. I did update my profile picture in celebration of breaking 1800 last episode. This is a photo of me from when I was 13 or 14 years old. I was holding a caricature of myself from a few years prior. And behind me is my trophy collection from my scholastic days. So let's get into the chess, play the first game. Okay, first opponent, playing Loser Give Up. Okay, slightly intimidating username. And I'm going to play a Sicilian, going for I was going for the Accelerated Dragon. If white were to play d4, I'd take and play g6. But with bishop c4, usually the pawn likes to come to e6 to block the bishop. It's a nice move to undermine the light square bishop. White plays a4. I'm going to play a6. This takes away the b5 square. And yeah, rather than going for a dragon setup, I think I'll go for more of like a Taimanov. I might actually go for d5 here. And d5 takes and takes. Let's say bishop a2. Do have to watch out for the e-file opening. I could also start with knight to f6, which is maybe a bit safer of a move. I'm not too afraid of e5 because a knight g4 and queen c7 should eventually target the pawn. Yeah, I'm going to start with knight f6. Opponent's been playing very quickly in the opening. Yeah, rook e1 is played. And yeah, now I don't want to play d5 because takes and then there's a pin on the e-file. But I think I can start with queen c7 here. Somewhat of a preparatory move. And yeah, this is more of a Taimanov type Sicilian. But white's going for the expansion with d4. And now, yeah, it's not easy to stop d4 actually. Like I want to play bishop to e7, but after d4 takes and takes, then maybe I'm in time to play d5. We would trade a bit. I'll castle. Yeah, that's probably the way to go. Though now I'm just realizing there's e5 first. e5, then knight d5. Because bishop e7, e5, knight g4 runs into d4. Oh, but that's something to calculate. d4 takes, takes, and then takes, hitting the bishop. Okay, I'm going to start with bishop e7. Don't want to get too low on time. Opponent is decently high rated. They play d3. Okay, that's a safer move. And now I think I can happily play d5. Chase back the bishop. The e-file does open, but the bishop's attacked. Knight supports the pawn. And look to castle next move. And this is really the setup I was aiming for. Just, yeah, nice extended pawns, controlling space. White is fighting for the center with d4. And now, I mean, if I play c4, the bishop drops back to c2. If I play bishop f5, there's takes and takes. I'm left with the isolated pawn. So d4 is a wise choice from white. I'm still drawn to bishop f5. Like takes, takes. I don't think I'm too concerned about bishop takes d5. I can then play rook a d8. And then I would have some nice space advantage. So yeah, let's go for bishop f5. I just didn't want the bishop coming back to c2, controlling the diagonal, preventing bishop f5. So I've effectively developed my minor pieces. I've gotten my king safe. We are entering the middle game. And now I am left with isolated queen's pawn. And it is true that this pawn can be a long-term weakness, but okay, well now it's, I guess it was just a short-term pawn. Pawn has disappeared from the board. White has basically accepted my gambit. Now I thought I'd have a lot of initiative, like starting with rook a d8. Let's play right away. And then, like, there's ideas of knight g4 to target f2. Also, if c4, I have the option to play knight b4. Also, if I want, I could throw in bishop takes b1 and then knight b4, because knight c3 is likely coming. I'll take a moment here. Do have to watch out for the time situation. I'm looking at knight g4, bishop e3. And then takes and takes. Feels like there should be compensation there. Knight b4, knight c3. Oh, wait a minute. Knight b4 threatens knight c2 and knight d3 and the bishop. Yeah, let's play this. For some reason, I thought after knight c3, white's defending, but yeah, this has multiple threats. And it's a drawback of committing the pawn to c4, even though it supports d5. Leaves some weaknesses in the position. So knight a3. And now I could just win back the pawn. Or if I want to be ambitious, there is knight d3 hitting the rook and the f2 pawn. Knight d3, rook e2. And then I can take the bishop, actually. Yeah, I think I'll start with knight d3. More ambitious move. I mean, knight takes d5 would have been a safe option, also completely fine. But with this move, I am attacking f2 twice, and now I take. And the queen is cut off along the d file. White's not taking back immediately, but seems like this is the only logical move. So I've won back the pawn. Pieces are happy. But white's holding on to f2, so it still might take some work to win. I'm wondering if I'm threatening this. Like knight takes f2, queen takes d5. Okay, the queen gets off the d file. So I'd like to continue applying pressure. I probably want to get this rook into play and get my queen into play. I do have queen b6 looks nice. There's also bishop g4. I can also move the knight and threaten bishop d3. Okay, I'm going to play maybe not the first move that comes to mind, but queen d7. I like the queen on the d file. It also supports rook e8. I really want the rook to enter the game. I couldn't play rook e8 immediately because it would just be hanging. But now with rook e8, yeah, aligning with the queen, pinning the bishop. I mean, white has knight c4 here. I guess one benefit to pinning the bishop is I might be setting up knight f4 to hit the queen and maybe start targeting the g2 pawn. It's actually funny that knight f4 almost traps the white queen, because I'd be controlling the d file, c2 square. Okay, but the queen still has squares. Okay, so knight f4. Knight f4, queen e1. And if I take, okay, the pawn would take, which does look nice. Yeah, I think I'll just go for this. This leads to a nice structure. And then probably put the bishop on e4. So blockading the now isolated e-pawn. Bishop does a nice job reinforcing my pieces. And very soon I probably want to attack on the king side. Okay, white is threatening a fork. So I have queen g4. My pieces look nicely aggressively placed, but yeah, I do have to be careful of my pieces being exploited, especially by the knights. Like, all my pieces are actually placed on light squares, and any knight move from either knight would attack light squares. But I think everything's under control. Okay, knight d2. I'll probably just move the bishop back. And now I'm unleashing the rook again, and probably preparing this move, knight f4. There's a nice idea of knight f4, queen f2. I have knight h3 with the pork, pin and fork. Yeah, this might just be winning, actually. Knight f4, because I'm threatening to take the queen with check. Queen e1 doesn't work because queen takes g2 checkmate. Queen f2 looks like the safe move, but yeah, knight h3. And the queen doesn't have any other squares. Queen c4, I checkmate. Queen c2, bishop takes c2. The best try is probably rook takes g5, but white allows the checkmate. So, okay. Yeah, that game finished somewhat abruptly, but I think it was an instructive game. And I had the feeling I was playing like a pretty solid player. Like, it took some time to actually get a clear advantage. And I do want to analyze the opening because, yeah, maybe I didn't handle it in the best way. I mean, you usually see this in a lot of like lower level games, probably far below this rating level, where white basically treats the Sicilian as an Italian and just develops the pieces like this. At higher levels, usually white will play d4 and go into open Sicilian or play the Rosalimo with bishop to b5. If white were to do this, I would have played the Accelerated Dragon. But yeah, sometimes when you play Sicilian, you do have to react to the different sort of things that your opponent might do. And with bishop c4, yeah, e6 is pretty much automatic. And if we just go forward here, yeah, the engine says I could have played d5 right away. It does open e-file, and that's why I was a little bit hesitant to go into this with black being completely undeveloped on the king side. But I guess after knight f6, rook e1, bishop e7, black is castling pretty quickly. But that didn't happen. I delayed d5. And yeah, one thing I wanted to show, which I didn't have too much time to explain during the game, but when I played knight f6, one of the ideas is to provoke white to play e5, which at first looks like an attractive move because it wins time attacking the knight. But very often e5 can be overextending, and the plan was to play knight to g4, rook e1, and queen c7. And this is a kind of typical sequence in these sort of Sicilian positions where the e-pawn is now just overextended and weak. And if queen e2, then I can play d6 and attack the pawn. And I'm not winning the pawn, but I'm getting a very nice position with some actively developed pieces. I'm hitting h7, and this would have been pretty pleasant to go into. So my opponent didn't play e5, and yeah, played c3, which I think was a good idea. And yeah, maybe here white could have played e5. And I realized this perhaps a little bit too late, that e5 can be supported, because if I play knight g4, there's d4, and after, I mean, if takes, I was trying to calculate this from a distance, but yeah, my opponent was playing really quickly, so I didn't have time to calculate so much. I was looking at the idea of taking on e5, which the engine doesn't like. After takes, I win back the piece. I guess the problem with this, even though I win a pawn in this variation, White just has h3. E-pawn's defended, the knight has to go back, and then after takes. Yeah, it's kind of ugly for black. But who knows, maybe I would have gone into this thinking it would be the best way to imbalance the position. So yeah, my opponent probably should have played e5 and d4, but instead played d3. And yeah, I think going forward from here, the play was pretty smooth. Yeah, I got nice active position and kind of accepted the fact that, yeah, the pawn is weak, but as we saw, if white takes the pawn immediately, it just ran into trouble. And thankfully I did find this move knight b4, and yeah, life was just very, very good here. Just go forward, see if anything major was missed. But yeah, it seems like everything was under control. The engine actually wants knight takes b2, but I guess knight takes b2 does make some sense because it hits a rook. Guess I was more focused on the king side. And yeah, knight f4 just pretty much ends the game. White could have tried rook takes d5, but I just win the queen. And yeah, it's hard for white to recover from here. So, okay, nice game to start the episode. Let's do another. Next opponent, playing Hey K01. And okay, let's continue the theme of playing the Sicilian. Are we going to get an open Sicilian? We do. So I'm going for the Accelerated Dragon. There are a lot of different, very playable variations of the Sicilian, but the Accelerated Dragon, it's an opening I adopted not too long ago, maybe within the last few years. But I've realized it's a very easy opening to learn and to understand and just to start playing. Pieces develop very naturally, and black can very quickly complete development. And there is a big difference between the Accelerated Dragon and the normal mainline dragon, usually when black plays d6 on move 2. Because I haven't committed to d6, I can play the move d5 in one go. And I'm pretty sure I can do it right away. I will admit that I haven't really looked at too much theory, especially in this specific line recently. But d5 is usually the main idea if you can get away with it. Challenging the center, especially with white's king uncastled. White could play e5 here to hit the knight. I'd probably drop back to d7. So white castles instead, and this does create the pin along the d file. So I am pretty much on my own now. There are a few moves that come to mind, like queen a5, rook b8, typical attacking moves on the queen side. I am liking queen a5, just a nice way to get out of the d file pin and start exerting pressure, especially against the a2 pawn. Now the knight's basically tied down to defending a2. Now, whenever you play this move as black and there's a queen on d2, you do have to be really careful of potential tactics. Like if white already had the king on b1, then there'd probably be the move knight takes d5, with the idea to hit the queen and like imagine king b1, knight takes d5. If I take, there's a in-between move to take with check. But that's not relevant because the king is on c1. And white goes for e5, so attacking my knight. I think it's very simple just to drop back, attacking the pawn twice. Imagine white will follow up with f4 to just defend the pawn. But white plays bishop h6. So yeah, it seems like white is going for this typical, sometimes we call it a Yugoslav attack, with a queen bishop battery and then the idea of h4, h5. I think in this case, I'm just happy to take the pawn on e5. And it's a center pawn. I guess if I take and white plays h4, I should have some idea what to do. If I take, so it takes h4. I'm actually wondering about d4 in that position. Wait a minute, do I have d4 now? Okay, this is definitely a critical moment to slow down and take some time. Because d4 right now was not the first move that came to mind, but I guess the point would be I'm trying to take advantage of the fact the queen is tied down to defending the bishop. And if... Oh, this could get complicated. If d4, bishop takes g7, I was thinking I'd take the knight, but now I'm realizing queen h6 is possible in that line. Yeah, that might be too risky. d4... I mean, if white didn't have this response, takes, queen h6, looking for ways to try and exploit the queen side, like queen b4, but then takes... I could take on b2, but then king b1. Yeah, I think it's too risky. So let's go back to my original idea. Knight takes e5, h4. And then d4. d4 takes again. Is there any differences? I just don't want to give white the possibility to start attacking without any clear follow-up. And this is perhaps one downside of playing such an opening, is it can get sharp, and sometimes you do get attacked. I'm actually considering bishop takes e5, just sacrifice exchange. Looks interesting. I'm also considering rook b8 and just trying to set up a quick initiative on the queen side. I don't want to take too long here. I mean, there's also d4 takes and then king takes, and we just trade. d4 takes... One more time. d4 takes, queen h6. Takes on b2, king b1. I save the rook. It's just so hard to evaluate. If I take... What if I take on a2? Threatening mate. Actually, if I take on a2, this is interesting. Okay, so d4 takes, queen h6, queen takes a2, b takes c3, rook d8. I might go for this. It looks terrifying with the queen and bishop here, but I'm threatening... I probably just want to start attacking like knight c5. White's king is very unsafe. I'm going to go for this. I burned a few minutes there. Probably not the best time management. I could still bail out too. Like if bishop takes g7, I could play king takes g7. But it's a long calculation. Takes, queen h6, queen takes a2. Oh, I haven't lost the rook yet. So b takes c3. Yeah, this is what I was looking at. Rook d8. So it's a big trade. I guess I do lose a pawn. Oh, but I win the pawn back in that line. Yeah, it looks like we're going to go into this. Hopefully I'm not missing anything obvious. Okay, well, white didn't play the most challenging move. Now I can happily take the queen and then recapture on g7. So I'm actually a little bit disappointed. Like, even though I'm relieved that, okay, I'm not going to be in trouble here, but that seemed like a really interesting position to play. And definitely worth analyzing after the game. Okay, here white is giving me the chance to save my queen. Next move, I'll win back the bishop. I'll take with king. Keep my knight here attacking the pawn. Yeah, now it's fun to attack when I have a queen and the opponent doesn't. And white has no attack on the king side anymore. I guess I could have started by taking the pawn. It's probably a little bit more accurate because white does have rook e1. And the thought is that I'm going to start targeting b2. So material-wise, I have, what is it, queen and knight for rook and pawn. A pretty good spot to be in. And I imagine the queen, rook, knight, and bishop can eventually coordinate to attack. Hopefully create some mating nets. Also the a-pawn. a5, a4. Eventually a3. The knight can come in. The bishop can come in. Either t6 or f5. So white is taking their sweet, sweet time. Yeah, given the length of my opponent's think in this position, I think they might be abandoning the game. I mean, usually the server will detect it though if they're inactive in a losing position. At least it does on Chess. I'm not sure about what the system is on chess.com. Oh, okay, my opponent moves. Let's play this. Yeah, queen d4 was also possible, but I didn't want to align my queen with a rook. And now let's play knight c5. Yeah, who knows? It's possible my opponent maybe had a pizza delivery. Had to give some attention to food or something. Okay, so offering the bishop trade. There's a couple strategies to try and convert this. Might actually take with pawn here. Takes with pawn. Yeah, it looks weird, but I like the knight staying on c5. The knight also restricts rook d7. a5 is incoming. Like, I'm not so concerned about my double isolated e-pawns, given the material situation. It was such a material discrepancy. The positional factors become a bit less relevant. I think if I were white, I would play this move, rook d4. Hope for knight takes b3 with the discovery, but then rook f4 and takes. Okay, king c1. That's another try. Let's play a5. Really just going for a4. Trying to induce some weakness in white's position. And white's trying to put up some resistance. Play queen b4. Yeah, with the pawns on light squares, I can now invade in the dark squares. Probably threatening force mate with knight takes b3. The point would be after takes, I have queen c3. Okay, so now takes and queen c3. There's king d1. So let's play this. Threatening mate in 1. Yeah, the king does kind of slide away. I'll play king e8. Simply preparing rook d8 to offer the rook trade. I guess I could have taken the pawn with check. I've had so many opportunities to take this pawn this game, but it's still surviving. Okay, now the queen and knight will do some cleanup work. Where does my queen want to go? Probably here. Knight will come back. My goal is to try and checkmate before white flags. Try and get into a4. Okay, white's saving the pawn. Yeah, white is maybe hoping for some eventual stalemate. Although with the pawns, it's not going to happen. Now I'm threatening mate. If rook b4... Okay, rook b4, I just take it. Okay, looks like I'll probably win on time. Oh, okay. I win by checkmate. Okay. Yeah, I guess I just had to be patient for the second part of this game. But let's go back and analyze this really sharp middle game. We went into one of the probably common lines in the Accelerated Dragon. And yeah, d5 is the principal move to expand the center. And yeah, after we got this, I played queen a5. Engine actually likes queen c7 a bit better. Perhaps discouraging e5. What is the point after takes? Takes. So black, I guess black gambits a pawn here. This is what the engine prefers. And there's a lot of compensation with the two bishops, the rooks coming in to c8 and b8. Yeah, this actually looks really fun. Probably very thematic for the Accelerated Dragon, where you just, yeah, you're less materialistic and more focused on initiative and active pieces. But I didn't play queen c7, played queen a5. And yeah, let's get to this moment. After d4, wow, so the engine actually says bishop takes e5 is a top choice. So I briefly considered this. I just thought it's not necessary to sack the exchange. But apparently black has like more than enough compensation. The darks for a bishop, rook b8 coming. So yeah, sometimes these sort of decisions are intuitive. Like rather than calculation based, you just have to like kind of feel the power of the bishop, especially when white trades off the darks for a bishop. But yeah, I went for d4. And after takes, yeah, my opponent should have played queen h6. And I was going to take on a2, threatening mate in 1. And after takes, yeah, my plan was to play rook d8. And the engine says this is much preferable for black. When I was calculating this from a distance, I wasn't 100% sure because, I mean, this looks scary. And I mean, usually the darks for a bishop is black's main defender. But it's hard for white to actually do much with these pieces because like white wants to play bishop f6 and checkmate, but I'm controlling f6. And the bishop has nowhere good to go, and the queen is tied down to the bishop. And meanwhile, yeah, there's ideas of queen a1, and then discoveries along the d file, also rook b8. So yeah, this would have been very pleasant to play. Engine says rook d4 is the best move. And then, oh, rook d4 is actually scary because rook h4 is a threat. And then the only winning move for black, only better move for black, is to play bishop a6. Yeah, it still looks like a mess. If bishop takes a6, like there's option for queen a1, but even better is just take back and save queen a1 for later. Yeah, I'd still be scared playing this, but okay, seems like everything was still fine for black if I play accurately. So let's do one more. There's been 2 Sicilians so far, and I'm black again. We'll make it a 3rd Sicilian. Black 3 times in a row. I think the last episode had games all featuring the Grand Prix. This episode, it's a Sicilian extravaganza. And we have another Accelerated Dragon. Are we going to get the same line that I just played? f3? No, bishop e2. So with bishop e2, black can take a similar approach with d5, as far as I know. I actually used to play a similar setup when I was younger from the white side. And I vaguely recall the idea of d5 takes and then knight b4. The idea is just to take back and avoid the trade on c6. Yeah, let's go for this. Okay, so white takes immediately. I'll take back. I mean, maybe I can use some of the ideas I just analyzed. Like queen c7. I had this position, almost this position in the previous game. Previous game, the pawn was on f3 and the bishop was still on f1. So does it make a huge difference? I mean, nice thing about queen c7, it does prevent pawn e5. Yeah, because then I just take bishop f4, the queen can escape. Yeah, let's go for this. I mean, I only briefly analyzed a similar line just a few moments ago. I guess now it's a question, do I take with the knight or the pawn? I could take with knight. Maybe taking with knight is a better way to induce the trades. Also unleashes the bishop. Is white going to take the pawn? White does. Okay, so... well, I had like a very similar position just a few moments ago with the engine turned on, but the pawn was here and the bishop is here. So there might be some small differences. For one, I have bishop b7 maybe to try and win g2. The engine had given bishop f5 as a strong move. And there's also bishop e6 to consider. Honestly, bishop f5 looks really nice. Threatening mate. And connecting the rooks. Yeah, let's go for this. I mean, I have the two bishops and the two open files. And meanwhile, like, even though I'm down a pawn, white doesn't really have any attack against my king. And in such positions with opposite side castling, it usually comes down who can attack. It comes down to who can attack more effectively and more quickly. So I'm probably expecting bishop e3 here, just to try and neutralize this bishop. And I'm thinking rook b8 just to keep throwing punches. I guess with rook b8 there is bishop takes f5. Bishop takes b2. Oh, king d2, I have rook d8 in that line. Yeah, let's start with rook b8. Just a simple tempo move. Gaining time on the b2 pawn. Activating the rook. I think it would be really bad for white to play a move like b3. But then the question becomes, what else is there to do for white? Yeah, b3 maybe was only way to try and defend. Because I think c3 would have ran into bishop takes c3. So, I mean, this is a good sign, because dark squares are much weaker on the queen side for white. Now I could play rook d8. Actually, I could have played this last move too. But the point is, like, if the queen moves back, then I just take on d3 and there's a pin on the c file. So I'm mainly looking at rook d8, queen c5. Which is slightly annoying, because I definitely don't want to trade queens. I guess what I could do also, I can just play queen c3. Because with bishop takes f5, I have the same idea that I was looking at in the other line, where I can chase a king to d2, and then play rook d8 to pin the queen and the king on the d file. So yeah, queen c3 is probably my first choice now. Yeah, I don't see anything clear after rook d8, queen c5. It's probably good somehow, but yeah, let's just go for queen c3. And yeah, this looks very, very fun to play for black. I have a feeling my opponent's going to walk into this line, takes and queen b2. Oh, wait a minute, though. Oh, it's not so simple. I thought I have rook d8, but there's bishop d7. I think I just made the assumption that I'd pin and win the queen. Maybe I should take first. Uh-oh. My opponent disconnected. Oh, okay, they're back. Yeah, the queen c3 was based on a bit of a miscalculation. Now if I take back, there's bishop d4. Do I have anything there? Like I'm currently down a pawn, so let's try not to let this slip. I mean, I could throw in queen b2, king d2. I could also maybe throw in e6. It's kind of a funny move. E6 is a really funny move. I'm leaning towards queen b2. Queen b2, king d2, I take. Queen takes. Not super clear. And there's also queen b2, king d2, e6, but there's bishop takes e6. Okay, I feel like I have to throw in this move. And then I probably just take the bishop and try and exploit the king. And maybe I eventually take on a2. So white's making a bit of a mistake here. They're taking their time when they have one legal move. In these situations, you should just play the only legal move and then think. It looks like my opponent has some internet issues. Okay, I think I have to take the bishop now. Like I really wanted to play this. Can I get away with it? Rook d8, bishop d7. I don't think I can. Unless I have rook d8, bishop here, and then rook c8. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Take a moment here. Oh, I'm getting low on time. So takes, rook d8, king e2. Okay, I'm gonna go for this. This might be the wrong approach. There's bishop d7. I just see rook c8. And yeah, I'm down a piece, but I have initiative. I'll be attacking c2. I'll be threatening rook c7 as well. And the king's on d2. I mean, it's a big shish kebab on the d file. And this is white's only try, which, okay, white doesn't play, so I think I'm let off the hook a little bit. I guess this is still playable for white. Is it's bishop, bishop, pawn, and rook for a queen. But with the king on d2, it should be hopefully pretty straightforward for black. Threatening e4 now. I think I'll play h6 just to give some loot for my king. If I played f5, then there's bishop c4 and I lose a rook. So the plan is to play... Wait a minute. If I play king h7 too soon, there'd be bishop takes g6. Let's play queen a3. Wait a minute. Queen c3. Actually, let's play queen c3. I was calculating bishop takes a7. But then there's a nice move, pawn to e4. If bishop takes, I'm going to invade. Okay, I'll draw back the queen. And the goal is to expand. I think now I can play f5. Bishop c4, then king h7. I really just want to open the center to get to the king. And with the dark square bishop as my only minor piece, I definitely want my pawns on white squares. So e4 should come at some point. I'll start with king h7. Yeah, but if I play e4, it's not so easy. Try queen c3. And queen c3 basically sets up e4. But yeah, not making much progress. Now with the queen on c7, I am potentially targeting the h2 pawn. So trying to poke and prod. Now I can probably play e4. Take. Yeah, so after takes, I have rook takes on d2. And that looks like a pretty good transformation. I also have queen takes h2. But what I don't have is a lot of time, so let's just play a quick move. Simplifying here. Now this is a triple, actually quadruple fork. I'll win back the rook or the bishop. Ooh. Okay, I have to play queen b7. Otherwise the rooks would come in and that would not be pleasant. It's still not easy. Or maybe it is. I have bishop d4. Okay. Yeah, bishop d4 makes it a bit easier. You know what's crazy though? My opponent should not have resigned. Like this position is not easy to win. Like after, like let's say rook e2 takes and then takes. Like the engine only gives -2 for black. If white puts a pawn in a4 and then just waits around, like let's say h3, king h2, it's not easy to actually break through. And with my time situation, yeah, maybe I could have still taken like a lot of effort to win this position. So, okay, small mistake from my opponent at the end, resigning, and was still probably a position with some hope. Let's go back though. Definitely a very sharp game. I probably misplayed it at some point. I definitely had one miscalculation when I thought everything was going well for me. So yeah, it's nice to like have just analyzed this. Bishop to f5 is one of the top moves. Engine actually recommends bishop e6 in this position. Now, I'm not sure the big differences between this position and the position with the pawn on f3 and bishop on f1. But yeah, it looks like either of these moves are perfectly fine. I went with bishop f5, bishop d3, rook b8, b3. And the advantage isn't actually huge for black. The top move is queen c3. So we went into what looks to be the critical line. And here, yeah, I went for rook f d8, which the engine doesn't like. Like now it says white's doing fine after bishop d7. But I thought this is probably very difficult for white to play. My plan was to play rook to c8, which the engine really doesn't like, because there's king e2. And if I take, oh, there's rook d2. What if I play rook c7? Ah, queen b5, wow. I thought I would have enough compensation with the bishop attacked and the c2 pawn falling, but like white would just kind of squirm away with the king and not winning the bishop. So yeah, apparently the best move is e6 first. And then if queen d3, then I have rook b7. But I should not play rook c8 because it just loses time. Okay, so this would have been playable. But yeah, what happened in the game, once I won the queen, I think it was basically no worries for black going forward. And the biggest worry was my time, but okay, I managed to not get too low. And then, yeah, this is a nice finishing tactic, rook takes d2. Even though the engine doesn't have rook takes d2 as the top move, it prefers rook e8, probably to then take on h2. But I thought this was a simpler approach. But yeah, it's kind of a weird imbalance because it's 2 rooks and 2 pawns for queen and bishop. And these pawns could be hard to win. But okay, yeah, the game was cut a little bit short, but I'll take the win. So keeping a clean streak. Some fun games today, all games featuring the Sicilian. Hope you guys learned a lot. If you have questions, do leave them below. And as always, if you like the content, do subscribe. It does help the channel. And I'll see you guys soon.